Welcome into Battery Power. Grant McCauley, Chris Willis with you. Welcome into another edition of the show. After our brief hiatus, we are back, and the Braves and all of Major League Baseball, they're going to be getting pretty busy here up in Nashville as the winter meetings are upon us. Again, a little bit of a change to the show. We've had Corey McCartney with us for so long, but I'm thrilled to have Chris Willis of Battery Power right here with me for Battery Power TV. We got some serious brand power going on right here, I'd say, Chris.
Oh, I agree. It's great to be here with you and stepping in here for Corey.
Well, we're going to have ourselves a good old time. And hopefully up in Nashville, the Braves are going to have themselves a good old time. But at some point over the course of the winter, they've got some shopping to do, some holiday shopping, if you will. And with the winter meetings happening and Alex Anthopoulos with a few things to do, could it be happening as soon as this coming week? And we know there's a list. Chris, there's always a list, no matter how good a club is, of ways to get better. And the Braves have already been busy this winter. The bullpen has been fortified. It has a chance, I think, to be stronger than ever. You got Pierce Johnson back. You got Joe Jimenez back. Tyler Matzek's returning from Tommy John surgery. Then you throw in guys like Aaron Bummer, Reynaldo Lopez. You've got A.J. Minter. You got Raisel Iglesias. I mean, Chris, this looks like it could be perhaps the best bullpen in baseball, and there's nothing wrong with having that be one of your club's strengths.
No doubt, and we know how much they've prioritized the bullpen in recent seasons. I was really impressed getting Aaron Bummer the way they did. I know a lot of people saw those surface stats and was kind of a little turned off by it, but I think he's a really good reliever, especially if you look at the peripherals. Was a little bit unlucky last year, but I think he's got a chance to be really good. And I kind of look at it like it was the same deal with Pierce Johnson last year. People saw that ERA and, wondered how good he could be, but, he fit in seamlessly and pitched well enough that, they gave him an extension. So I'm really excited about the bullpen. I think Reynaldo Lopez will end up in the bullpen. I know they're talking about starting him, but, that's a big power right-handed arm, and if he could possibly throw multiple innings, to couple innings out of the bullpen, man, it's just another weapon because he could pitch late in the games, he could pitch in the middle of the games, and I mean, I just think this bullpen's shaping up to have so much more flexibility than what we've seen from last year. It was a good bullpen last year, but just didn't have the flexibility that we had seen earlier on.
And so much more power. I mean, I know we talk about the Braves lineup power and how that's a strength of this club, but I know we looked at, while the bullpen, it took some lumps in the second half, but overall, I think it was a group that more times than not did the job. Pierce Johnson certainly helped out when he came over. Joe Jimenez found his form. A.J. Minter found his form. I think that Raisel Iglesias had a good year, even though it was slow starting for him. Now you add some other pieces to this, and we're going to get into the starting rotation in a moment, but bringing in Reynaldo Lopez on this, $30 million deal, the Braves obviously have plans for him. Now, what role he's going to be serving in wasn't as good as a starting pitcher, but he's also now found success at the big league level for multiple years as a reliever. And Chris, I think that may be one of those things that's not talked about as much when you discuss maybe changing his role. Yes, he has had success there, but as a big league pitcher, he really hadn't found himself prior to moving to the bullpen. So he's kind of a different guy in my mind if he does, in fact, move back to the starting rotation. And I think the Braves and maybe Reynaldo Lopez, they're just curious. They want it, and they owe it to themselves, I think, to find out what he can do.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing that jumps out at you is how much his velocity's ticked up, especially in the last couple of seasons when he's been at pitching out of the bullpen. If he can keep the velocity up, not see too much of a drop off, he may be a completely different guy than the guy that broke into the league, with the White Sox as a young pitcher. So, and I'm kind of excited to see him. I thought he was really impressive last year. I know I got to see one of those appearances in person, and I mean, it's just 100-mile-an-hour gas.
Yeah.
And the Braves didn't even have a chance. I mean, he mowed the lineup down and went on. So, and I can remember Brian Snitker being very complimentary of him, when he was asked about him after that game. So, I'm not surprised at all to see him with the Braves this year, this offseason.
Yeah, no, it's not a shocker. And again, the power arms we talked about, especially when we went into October, that a lot of times it's you want to have those hard throwers that can come out of the bullpen. The Braves had guys who could miss bats, but they didn't necessarily have the hardest throwing bullpen. In fact, they were kind of at the lower end of those rankings when it came to that average fastball velocity. But all of a sudden, Spencer Strider has got a little bit of company for hardest thrower on the Braves staff. So that's another thing that we can monitor depending on how the Braves decide to deploy Reynaldo Lopez. I did want to touch on Tyler Matzek real quick because I feel like even for somebody like me, as I'm going through and I'm looking at the moves and the re-signing of Joe Jimenez, the re-signing of Pierce Johnson, whatever role that Reynaldo Lopez is in, and whatever other moves the Braves make, Tyler Matzek was a huge part of Atlanta's success. He's been absent, obviously missed all of 2023 after undergoing Tommy John surgery. But I think that, Chris, and we'll talk about it more as we get towards spring training, that's somebody to keep an eye on. Could be a dark horse to really throw some important innings for the Braves. And dare I say it, along with Aaron Bummer and A.J. Minter, yet another lefty who's had a track record of success in the big leagues.
I mean, we've seen how good Tyler Matzek can be. He was a difference maker in 2021. Once they got to the postseason down the stretch, I mean, we know he's an impact arm, and he may need a little time to get back into it after the Tommy John surgery and coming through it. But I mean, he's another guy that you could see pitching in the 8th inning, 9th inning, and could also come in the 5th, if you needed him to. He's shown that ability in the past. So I agree with you. I think, he's another impact guy that could, play a huge role this year.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see him back out on the mound because, as you and I both know, and anybody watching this video, any Braves fan probably knows, one of the greatest moments, greatest innings, perhaps, of Braves baseball ever belongs to Tyler Matzek from the 2021 NLCS. I'm not asking him to do that every time, but I won't be surprised if he can do something like that again. So the Braves bullpen continues to get stronger, but I think we know in the rotation, they need one more arm. We're going to put Reynaldo Lopez off to the side because, yep, they can stretch him out to start in spring training. That's something that's the best time to do it anyway. So you don't want to be trying to do that in June, July, August. You don't want to be at that point of need. I think if you're the Atlanta Braves, particularly based on what we've seen the last few seasons, they want to go out and I think address this rotation just a bit more. And it could be addressed in a number of ways. With Aaron Nola and Sonny Gray, their two main free agent targets now off the board, I think Alex Anthopoulos could look to fill this void the way that he's filled many of Atlanta's void, and that is with a trade. So let's talk about some big names, Chris, and I don't think anyone has been talked about more in terms of Braves trade rumors in that rotation than Dylan Cease of the Chicago White Sox, 2022 American League Cy Young runner-up. He's a guy that misses a lot of bats. He's shown some durability. He's got 2 years of control. It may not turn into the extension because he's a Scott Boras client, but 2 years of Dylan Cease, particularly when we talk about the potential for Max Fried to leave, the fact that Kyle Wright's no longer a factor for the Braves rotation, and that Charlie Morton gets a year older every year. A guy like Dylan Cease for multiple years makes a lot of sense for the Atlanta Braves. It's just all going to come down to, I think, what the Chicago White Sox want in return.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, it also comes down to, he's a detractable target for Atlanta, but he's a detractable target for a lot of teams. He could help a lot of teams in the league. He's from Georgia too. So, that's another added bonus to it. But I think, of the guys on this list, what jumps out at you about Dylan Cease is just because he's got that extra year of control.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have to give up real assets, real prospect package, to acquire a guy, you want them to be able to help you for more than one season. It takes the sting out of rather than trading for a rental or whatever. So it will be interesting. There's been a lot of noise around Dylan Cease. I'm kind of expecting more after the winter meetings get underway. So, but I think he's a perfect fit. It just comes down to the price tag and, what kind of prospect package you're going to have to put together.
Yeah, it definitely will. And it always does come down to that. And for the Braves, I mean, I think that, and we don't want to turn the whole episode into how much money do the Braves have left to spend? I don't think money is a detriment to going out and making a move. Now, could it be in the free agent side? Sure, it still could be, though I think their two biggest targets are off the board. But you could bring on somebody who's making a lot of money, like, say, Tyler Glasnow of the Tampa Bay Rays. He's due $25 million in his final year of control. There's been a lot of rumblings about what kind of trade package that the Rays could be looking to move. But we know, Chris, when you deal with the Tampa Bay Rays, you're not just getting somebody who's walking into free agency and they're trying to get a contract off their hands. They're pretty good at being able to extract a very nice return. And they've been doing this for quite some time to maintain themselves as one of the better clubs and most competitive clubs in baseball. As you look at Tyler Glasnow, I know the injury history for him might give you pause, but if you're thinking about a front of the rotation style arm and somebody who could really upgrade the Braves starting five, Tyler Glasnow makes an awful lot of sense, even if he doesn't have quite as much time he could spend in a Braves uniform as, say, Dylan Cease.
Oh yeah, and I think of all the arms on this list, I think he's got that breakout potential really if he's healthy.
Yeah.
And he had I think it was Tommy John, and once he came back last year, he was pretty healthy, I think, the rest of the way. So maybe that alleviates a little bit of that concern, but that he does have an injury history. I think the biggest thing for me is he's under contract for $25 million, which is a big total. That's probably the only reason the Rays are even looking at the
Yeah.
possibility of moving him. But I do think he's got that top of the rotation arm potential. I look at him. I don't look at him as a 3 or a 4. I think he's a guy, would pair very well with Spencer Strider,
Oh,
Max
yeah.
Fried at the top of the rotation. I think he's an impact arm. Again, the only problem is what's it going to cost? Because it's only you're only going to have him probably for 2024 unless you can bang out an extension, which we've seen the Braves do in the past. So, I think he's worth exploring. I really like him. I know a lot of people are really concerned about the injury history, and the Braves, I think they're looking for durability. They're looking for
Yeah.
innings. So, the risk might not make it a match there, but I really like Tyler Glasnow.
And I think that they're also looking for ways to fortify the rotation beyond just 2024, because as I alluded to, and as everybody knows already by now, Max Fried's in the final year of team control. Could there be an extension there? Sure, there could be, but we've seen what happens when you get to the final year. And this is not exclusively for the Braves. More times than not, you're going to reach free agency at that point. And Max Fried at that point may feel pretty comfortable about testing the market, though I think he'd be very comfortable staying in Atlanta as well. So you can't really take a Fried extension off of the board for Alex Anthopoulos over the course of this winter either. Two other names, though, and then I want to move to the free agents quickly as we talk about ways to improve this rotation. Corbin Burns, I think his time with the Brewers appears to be winding down. They should be shopping him this winter. I think they will move him this winter. That's kind of my feel on it. Seems like that their bridge to maybe get some kind of extension done really didn't go the way either side wanted it to when they discussed it, and it sounds like it hasn't been something that's been a priority for them, and he might have just priced himself out, as the case is, and that's Corbin Burns' own words for it. There's also Shane Bieber of the Cleveland Guardians. He's a guy, though, that I look at his 2023, and it makes me just a little bit more nervous just based on the fact his strikeouts were way down. He wasn't quite the same pitcher that he was, obviously, when he was the Cy Young Award winner a couple of years ago, but he's an attractive arm out there, and who knows what the price tag is. But we also know the Cleveland Guardians, much like the Tampa Bay Rays, they can be motivated to move some of their big players before they walk into free agency.
Yeah, and I mean, to start with Burns, he's probably the best pitcher available on the trade market. I think the big problem with him, I think there's even less of a chance of finding an extension with him, just because I mean he's arguably going to be the biggest pitching name on the market next offseason. So I mean he's going to have multiple high bidders. He'll be motivated to have a big season. Now there's no doubt he would make this 2024 Braves rotation. It would be scary if you could add Corbin Burns to the Max Fried and Spencer Strider. But again, the question marks for 2025. I think if you're gonna spend assets, you got to try to protect yourself a little bit long term and play the long game. I agree with you about Bieber just because I really liked him, but the strikeouts have gone down, the velocity's gone down. There's been some injuries. Maybe the price wouldn't be quite as high. I don't really have a good gauge on what that would be, but I'm like you, it gives me a little pause. And again, I think they're looking for innings and they're looking for, guys with track record. Bieber's a great pitcher. He's, even with the velocity loss, the strikeouts going down, he still pitched. He still put up good numbers and pitched well. But, I think there's a little like Glasnow. I think there's a little bit more risk associated with him.
Yeah, quickly on the free agents here. They're now at this point with Aaron Nola signing with the Phillies and staying there, and obviously with Sonny Gray deciding that he wanted to be a St. Louis Cardinal. It leaves Blake Snell, the National League Cy Young Award winner, Jordan Montgomery, who looked great in the postseason, and you've also got Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's out there that I think a lot of clubs are going to be interested in. I don't know if the Braves are going to be swimming in these waters. Obviously, all three of those guys would make the club better. I just don't necessarily see Montgomery in particular is a Boras client, so I would imagine that Scott wouldn't mind. And I say Scott because I've had so many conversations with him. We're on a first-name basis. But I think we know with Scott Boras, he doesn't mind kind of waiting to get his client the right fit and to be able to let someone know, to convince a club that all of their ills are going to be fixed by who he is offering them. And that usually means extra years and extra money as well. So I just don't know if Jordan Montgomery, who, good for him, could really cash in here, fits into the Braves plans the same way that a guy like Aaron Nola would. I just still don't view him quite on that level. Blake Snell, obviously that's a different discussion. I'm really, if the Braves get into the free agent market, I guess I say this and I'll ask you if you agree with me. I think they'd be looking for someone just to help really solidify the rotation rather than trying to sign a free agent to help front the rotation with Spencer Strider and Max Fried.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think if you go back to the free agent route now that Nola and Sonny Gray are both off the board, I think you're probably looking down a tier. I mean, Yamamoto fits every club. He's young. If you're going to spend the money, he makes a lot of sense. But I'm not sure the Braves are going to be, in that bidding war for him. But you go back a tier, you look at a guy like Marcus Stroman, Lucas Giolito. Those are guys that might be had on 1, 2 year deals with pretty good payout, but it's a chance for them to, for Giolito especially, a chance for him to rebuild his value before going back out on the open market. So I think if they go back to the free agent route, that's probably where we should be looking. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Right.
if you can slot in it as a number 3, or right there with Charlie Morton, that's still pretty good, especially if they can eat the innings up. I think I wouldn't be shocked to hear some free agent rumblings. I really haven't heard anything around Giolito much, and
Mhm.
Stroman especially. Stroman's really been quietly, but he quietly. I know he had an injury too, but he quietly pitched pretty well for the Cubs last year.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see him end up right there because we know Alex likes to these shorter deals, even if he has to put a lot of money into them.
Yeah, there are a lot of names still out there. Obviously, the trade targets, they could come from a number of different places. We might have mentioned them. We may not have. We've had Alex Anthopoulos go off the board to fill needs for the Braves, and he might have to go off the board with this whole left field thing. I know that Atlanta, did not pick up the option for Eddie Rosario, which was one I thought they could go either way on. I could see the case for bringing him back. I could see the case for maybe trying to figure out some other option that would fit, whether that's by trade or free agency, where the names out there aren't the most exciting in terms of the free agents. Trade could happen, but Chris, there's also an in-house candidate in Vaughn Grissom who has been displaced from the Atlanta infield. If he wants to be an everyday player or close to it for the Braves, there's been discussion about putting him in left field as well. With the winter meetings coming up, there's going to be a lot of discussions, particularly on that free agent front. Maybe this is the area where Alex Anthopoulos moves while he's still trying to figure out how the starting rotation market is going to play out and how he's able to augment his club in that way. But I think the Braves have definitely got a decision to make. And I think for me, at least, it goes beyond simply handing the keys to Vaughn Grissom and saying, go get him.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that, there's a wide range of possibilities here. I mean, if you look at the list of free agent outfielders, I mean, there's expensive options and there's cheap options that could probably get the job done. I'm thinking all the way from a free agent like Lourdes Gurriel,
Mhm.
on the high end, all the way down to a Robbie Grossman, who was a league average bat for the World Series champions last year and made $2 million. I don't really have a good feel for what they're going to do because I think it probably depends a little bit on what they have to do to get a starter at this point. So, if they have to spend a little more money to get a starter, it maybe knocks down the left field thing. Grissom is interesting. I think for me, I just wonder if they make a trade, is Grissom still going to be on the roster?
Right.
If he's on the roster, come spring training, then I won't be shocked at all to see them give him a real shot. But I do think they're going to have to add some insurance maybe around him as he tries to transition to left field. So, I think Grissom's probably a good enough athlete to get it done.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, it's not going to be easy, by any stretch of the imagination. And but I just wonder. I think when camp opens, if he's still on the roster, then I'll feel stronger about him being a candidate. But I still think there's just a lot of moving parts that we're going to have to see how they where they all line up.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get a much clearer read when the Braves get to spring training. I mean, clearly they're going to have tried to figure out exactly what it is they can do to get better at that position. But as we saw last year, and we saw the Braves lineup and what they did, the 25 home runs and the 750 OPS that you got out of Eddie Rosario, there's value there. Can Vaughn Grissom replicate that? I mean, his on-base skills at AAA Gwinnett, extremely good, but the power hasn't necessarily translated just yet as far as home runs are concerned, run production. He doesn't have to be the feature bat in the lineup either, though, so there's a case to be made for Vaughn. But what can the Braves do? What free agents are out there? Is there a trade that makes sense for Atlanta? Would there be a reunion, not just of like Robbie Grossman, but is Jorge Soler on the list for the Braves? Is Adam Duvall on that list? Is Jock Peterson on that list? We'll see how the Braves decide to do it. Is somebody who's never put on a Braves uniform on the list? Yes, there are most certainly some of those, and we're going to keep you covered right here on BPTV as we go through the winter meetings and through the hot stove. We appreciate it as always. As you ride along with us, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Go ahead and hit the bell so you get notifications every time that we drop a new episode. And as the hot stove heats up, we will keep you covered right here. Make sure you're also subscribed to the channel and check out batterypower.com to stay up to date on all things Braves. Until next time, I'm Grant McCauley. He's Chris Willis. We will catch you soon, Braves country.